So today, we're going to dive into the origin story of one of the most powerful legal institutions on the entire planet, the United States Department of Justice. And you'll see its story isn't just about law, it's really a story about America's biggest challenges.
Okay, when you hear Department of Justice, what comes to mind? Probably a huge federal agency, right? Global reach, thousands of employees. But what if I told you it all started as something, well, a lot smaller?
And I'm being completely serious. The job of the nation's top lawyer, the Attorney General, was basically a side hustle at first. It wasn't a department, it wasn't even a full-time gig. It was just one guy making a pretty tiny salary.
That's it, $1,500 a year. That's what the very first Attorney General, Edmund Randolph, made back in 1789. To put that into perspective for you, the job was so small and the pay was so low, he had to keep running his own private law firm just to pay the bills.
I mean, this really paints a picture, doesn't it? The original Attorney General was a lone wolf. No staff, no dedicated building. He didn't even get a clerk to help him out for almost 30 years. He was just the government's lawyer, there to give advice when asked.
So get this, for 81 years, the United States didn't have a Department of Justice. So what happened? Why all of a sudden in 1870 did the country need one? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. The nation was in the middle of a massive crisis.
And here's why it was born. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the Constitution was changed to give citizenship and voting rights to millions of people who had been enslaved. But those new rights were under constant, violent attack. So the brand new Department of Justice was created with a single urgent mission: get out there and protect America's newest citizens.
So, led by its first official Attorney General, a guy named Amos Ackerman, who was, ironically, a former Confederate officer, the DOJ went to war. And its first and biggest enemy was the Ku Klux Klan, which was using terror to stop African Americans from exercising their new freedoms. And you know what? It worked. Man, did it work. Using new federal laws, DOJ lawyers went after the Klan hard. We're talking over 3,000 indictments and hundreds of convictions. By the end of 1871, the Klan was, for a time, effectively broken. It was proof that a strong central legal force could actually get things done.
Okay, so let's fast forward. As America rolled into the 20th century, the DOJ's mission started to change again. It had to, because the country was facing totally new kinds of threats, all born from the Industrial Revolution.
The country was staring down two new giants. First, you had these massive corporate monopolies, they called them trusts, that were just choking out all competition. And second, you had the explosion of organized crime that was spreading across state lines. So, armed with a new tool called the Sherman Antitrust Act, the DOJ went after the biggest fish of them all, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil. This one company controlled pretty much the entire oil industry in the country. It was the definition of a monopoly.
After a huge legal fight, the Supreme Court sided with the DOJ in 1911. Standard Oil was shattered into 34 different companies. And you probably recognize some of their names today. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, yeah, those guys. This was a massive case that proved the feds could take on anyone.
And to fight all these new battles, the DOJ had to cool up, big time. It created a group of special agents in 1908, which, you guessed it, would become the FBI. It created formal divisions for antitrust and criminal cases. And, of course, under the legendary and very controversial J. Edgar Hoover, its power just exploded.
But even as the department was growing and taking on these new economic fights, it was about to be pulled right back to its original purpose, the very reason it was created in the first place, almost 100 years earlier.
The fight for civil rights in the 1950s and 60s was like an echo of the 1870s. Once again, the fundamental rights of African American citizens were being denied across the country, and the federal government had to step in.
And the DOJ was right in the thick of it. Under people like Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, the department created a dedicated civil rights division. Its U.S. Marshals were the ones on the ground, physically protecting people like James Meredith as they integrated segregated universities. The DOJ was tasked with enforcing the huge Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts that would literally change the country. And that brings us to the modern era, where you see the same pattern continue. As America's challenges get more complicated, more global, well, so does the Department of Justice. Think about it. The DOJ started out fighting domestic terror and corporate trusts. Now look at the battlefield today. The threats are global, they're digital, things the founders could never have dreamed of. And just like before, the DOJ adapted. It built new tools for new fights. It created the DEA to handle the war on drugs. After 9/11, it built a whole new national security division to focus on counterterrorism. It even has an office just to help American victims of terrorism overseas.
So, when you boil it all down, here's the big takeaway. The DOJ wasn't created from some grand pre-planned design. It was forged in crisis, over and over again. Its entire history is a mirror, reflecting the country's most difficult moments, from Reconstruction to the Civil Rights Movement and right into the modern age of terror.
And as new threats keep coming, things like AI, new kinds of global conflict, the department will have to change yet again. That's a given. The only real question is, how?